Hello Gators, this is lesson 1-3, midpoint and distance. Let's take a look at a midpoint. A midpoint, we have learned what it looks like in terms of points. It's the middle of a line segment. But what is it in algebra? Well, in algebra, if we take a look at the coordinates, it's actually the average of the x's is the x coordinate and the average of the y's is the y coordinate. Let's take a look at this particular example. I would like to find the midpoint, the very middle between A and B. And so what I do is I write M for midpoint, and I'm going to find a point. I'm going to have an X answer and a Y answer. The X answer will be using the X's of the 2 points, so it'll be -3 plus 4, and I'm going to average them. So I'm going to add them and divide by 2. Now to figure out the Y answer, I am going to look at the y coordinates, which is 2, and I'm going to average them, which means I'm going to add the 2 y coordinates and divide by 2. When I simplify, the answer will be 1/2 for the x coordinate and 0 for the y coordinate. So at 1/2, 0, right here, that is the location of the midpoint. Let's take a look at finding the midpoint for these. I'd like to find the midpoint for BC. Now BC is actually along a horizontal line. And a horizontal line, I can tell where the midpoint is. It's going to be right here. That will be the middle. And so I can tell that this answer is going to be, the x-coordinate will be -3.5. So it's between -3 and -4. And the y-coordinate will be the same as these two, which is 6. So I didn't really use the formula. I just kind of looked at it because I knew this was a horizontal line. Now the midpoint of CD, I'm going to use the formula. The midpoint is equal to, and I'm going to take the two x's, -2 and 2, and I'm going to add them up and then divide by 2. And then I'm going to take the two y's, 6 plus 3, and divide it by 2. So the answer will be 0, and then this will be 9/2. And it's okay to say 9/2, you don't have to say 4.5. Now to do the midpoint of EF, the midpoint, remember it's the average of the x's, so I'm going to take the two x's, add them up, divide by 2, and then I'm going to take the two y's, -1 plus 0, and divide by 2. And so the answer is going to be 8 divided by 2, which is a 4, and then -1/2. And then that is located right here. This will be where the midpoint is located. Okay, let's take a look at finding a, not finding a midpoint, but given a midpoint, if we can find the other endpoint. So one endpoint is 1, 4, so I'm going to put right here, this is one of the endpoints. I'm going to change my color. The midpoint is a 1, 1 right here, 1, 1. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to find the other point. And so one of the ways I can do this is by using the formula. So I'm going to say I don't know what the other endpoint is, and I'm going to call it x comma y. And then I'm going to use the formula. I'm going to take the two x's, I'm going to do x plus 1 and divide it by 2. And I know that answer will be 1. And I'm going to take the two y's, 4 plus y, I'm going to divide by 2, and that's going to be equal to the answer for midpoint is 1. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, so this will be x plus 1 is equal to 2, and therefore x is equal to 1. Over here, multiply both sides by 2, 4 plus y is equal to 2, and y is equal to -2. So it's telling us at 1, -2, this is where the other endpoint is. So the other endpoint is 1, -2, and that looks right. All right, let's take a look at the same problem and do it another method. So let's again graph 1, 4, and let's go ahead and graph 1, 1. And we know the endpoint is on the other side. Now I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. And so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and this is where the other point should lie. And that other endpoint, and I'm going to read it, is 1 comma a -2. And that's the answer I had the last time. All right, I'd like you to try the problem. Stop the screencast and see what you can do. Either use method 1 or method 2. Use an algebra approach or use a graphical approach. And here's the answer. I ended up using a graphical approach. What I did is I went down 6 units and over 4. So I know I'm going to have to go down 6 units and over 4 to go to the other side. And I was going to be able to read that point as -4. And it should have been -6. -4, -6 right here. Let's try it again. Stop the screencast and see what you can do. And here's the answer. I decided to do an algebra approach. I took the two x's right here, this x, and let me see. Let me get green here. I took this x and this x, added them up together, divided by 2, and then here's my answer. And I used algebra to get my x. And then I went ahead and took my two y's, added them up together, divided by 2, and I know this is the answer, -1, and I got y is equal to -3. And I used the graph here to kind of check my work to see if I did really get to the right place. All right, let's talk about a different topic. It's called distance. Now, we've been looking at distance in a horizontal direction or a vertical direction. What happens if the points aren't horizontal and vertical? Well, if that's the case, you can take a look at 2 points that are not vertical or horizontal, but you can break them into a triangle. And this part right here is the difference of the y's. If the two y's subtracted, take the absolute value, that's the distance. And the two x's, take the two x's, subtract them, and take the absolute value, and that will be the distance for the x's. We're going to use the Pythagorean theorem because this is a right triangle. So this distance is really our c, so d squared is equal to, and we'll use these two sides and we'll square them. Now when we want to solve for d, we're going to take the square root of both sides, and when you square things, you can drop the absolute value, and because it'll be positive anyway. The absolute value was just to ensure we're going to have a positive number. We're going to have a positive number when you square. So this is the formula for distance. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at applying this and trying to find the distance. This first distance, AB, I'm not going to use the distance formula because you can see I can just count, and that's a distance of 2. Whenever the points are vertical or horizontal, actually you don't need to use a distance formula. Okay, I'm going to try to find the distance between C and D, so I'm going to use the distance formula, which means that I am going to subtract the x's and then square them, and then I'm going to subtract the y's and then square them. Okay, and the x's that I'm going to be using are these two x's. So I'm going to use -2 and 2, and then I'm going to work with the y's, and the y's are going to be 6 and 3. So I went ahead and put everything in correctly. And so this is now going to be -4. -4 squared is a positive answer, 16. This is going to be 3. 3 squared is 9. So this answer is square root of 25. And we know that square root of 25 is a perfect square. It's actually 5 times 5. So the answer is 5. EF, I'm going to have to use the distance formula. Again, remember I'm going to subtract the two x's and square them. And then I'm going to subtract the two y's and then square them. I'm going to go look over here and look at my x's, and here's an x and here's an x. So this is going to be 2 take away 6. And then I'm going to take a look at the y's, -1 take away 6. And now I'm going to just use my algebra skills. This is going to be a -4. -4 squared is a positive answer, that's 16. This is going to be -7. -7 squared will be a positive answer, 49. And then this will be the square root of 65. Now 65 cannot be simplified anymore because 65 divided by 5 is 13, and we can't, and that is not a perfect square. Okay, your turn. Please stop the screencast and see what you can do. And here's the answer. There's the distance formula, and I went ahead and put in my two x's. I subtract the two x's, subtract the two y's, and then I went ahead and simplified. All right, let's try again. Stop the screencast, see what you can do. And here's the answer. Again, set up the problem where you take the square root, you're going to subtract the x's squared, subtract the y's, square it, and then simplify. So this lesson was about finding the midpoint and finding the distance.